All right, so welcome to conference. I wanted to extend a special welcome to our new extended family in Montana. It's really lovely to be in the beautiful country of Montana and to bring some new people into our fold, so welcome. Continuing our studies with what are we studying this semester?
Hero's Journey.
Hero's Journey. Hope everyone's seen the movie, Finding Joe. And as we're going along, I've asked you guys to kind of tell your beginning of your story, to write it out, and also to tell someone your story last week. Hopefully you guys had a chance to do that. And I had also asked, which is this week's conference, for you to just be thinking about as you're telling your story of your life before you're 13, is be thinking about those patterns we talked about with separation, initiation, and return, and those little patterns that we see at different points in our life. And I also asked for you to be thinking about, which is this week, your heroes and the stories that even at a young age that resonated with you, and they were the stories that inspired you and maybe helped you make decisions in your life. And also I asked you to be thinking about your Eshwa Devata. So that is our topic for this week. Let's start with this idea of an Eshwa Devata. So who can tell me what that is? So Sanskrit term for?
Deity of choice.
Yeah, it's hard for an exact translation in English, but it basically means, in the Hindu tradition, a deity of choice. But in many spiritual traditions, it means someone that is of spiritual nature, that inspires you, and that specifically speaks to you and inspires you, that is the inspiration that you look to for guidance and for strength and inspiration. So I was thinking of other traditions. So we were going to talk a little bit about Hinduism today and how specifically that's used in that tradition. But also growing up in the Catholic tradition, we have someone was just telling me that her daughters were getting confirmed today. And in that tradition, when you're confirmed, does anyone know this tradition? What do you do in that tradition when you get confirmed?
So you pick another name that goes after your middle name, and that person's supposed to be the same thing that you're talking about, a saint. And
Right.
the tradition of the Catholic Church that inspires you and will lead you through the rest of your adult life. I guess that's how I looked at it. That's right.
Right, so if you didn't hear her on the video, she said that it is, you choose a saint that you want to inspire you on your path, basically, and you choose that name of that saint to include. So my friends always tease me, I have this incredibly long name because I chose 2 confirmation names. And I didn't just want 1, I wanted 2. So, but in that tradition, like you read about all the different saints, right? And one saint in particular speaks to you and be like, that saint could inspire me on my path. So, and then in the Hindu tradition, you have a deity of choice, which is like your family deity. So the Joyce family had one that was carried on from Pattabhi Joyce's father and mother to his family, to his daughters, to their granddaughters, and that when we would go into the Shala, we would always see this beautiful depiction of the family deity. But then as well, in that tradition, you also find one that speaks to you. So most of you are familiar with my teacher here in the West, Tim Miller. As most of you know, Tim's Ishwa Devata is Hanuman, and his devotion he's been devoted to Hanuman for many, 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 many years. And years ago, learned the Hanuman Chalisa, and part of his devotion is to chant that chant every morning, and every time he does his devotions, he'll chant that. But different ways that people bring that energy or that deity into your life and have a little imprint on you as well. So back years ago when I was in India, one of my many trips to India, I had this necklace made. It's very tiny. I wanted a tiny version of it. Do you know what's on here? A depiction of Lakshmi. And And the thing I love about this, because she is my Eshwa Devata, sometimes I just touch it and I can feel the little ridges of her form, and it reminds me of what's important about her energy to me and what I want to bring into the world through that archetype's energy, through that deity's energy. Some people, you know, resonate with Ganesh, and so they'll have like a beautiful little Ganesh statue somewhere that reminds them of the different energies that Ganesh brings to the life. The Shiva that's over in front of Scott and Dave here is another beautiful energy that reminds us that we can always begin again. You know, it's like in tarot, there's this card that's the death card, and it kind of scares people sometimes. But the symbolism, again, of that particular archetype, which is what is in that system as well, is that it's also the birth card. Whenever there is a death, we believe then there's a new beginning and a birth energetically from that. So you know, as a yoga teacher for many years, one of the reasons we have an altar here at the Shala and all kinds of images of different deities and energies and on here, one of the reasons I have that is to inspire all of you to sort of find that one that speaks to you. And when you find that deity that speaks to you, maybe when you begin your practice, you might light a candle, or you might use a special little chant that's a chant of theirs. It's just a way to remind all of you that on our hero's journey, on our path, that we can be inspired by the stories of others. We can be inspired by the strengths and the creativity and the beauty of others. And so we can use that in a way on our own path to help us kind of find our way. And this isn't new to these different spiritual practices. It's also something that we find in the studies of psychology. So many years ago, Carl Jung came up with this idea of archetypes. You remember studying that in school? What were some of the archetypes that Carl Jung came up with? What are some of the images? No, call on Nima. Do you remember some of the images?
What is an archetype?
Archetypes are basically different images of types of personalities, right? So some of Jungian's archetypes were the hero, the victim, you know, the mother. If we look at the athlete, you know, there's all these different sort of like characters that are out there, and in understanding them, we kind of find ourselves sometimes in our own path on our hero's journey. So we can identify with them, and in that identification, sometimes it helps us and gives us guidance as well. Carolyn Myss is going to be one of the reads for this semester, which I gave Kim to share with you guys on Sunday, is Archetypes, the Beginner's Guide to Your Internet. But I love this book so much, and she has all these different archetypes. I'm going to read through just a couple and see if any of them might resonate with you, just see. And again, these can be things that, we talk about your younger years, you know, when you were growing up, that maybe at a young age you identified with. And knowing some of you, I could say, yes, this is one of your archetypes. So the advocate, the artist, the creative, the athlete, the caregiver, the intellectual, the queen executive. Here's one, the rebel, the spiritual seeker, the visionary. And it goes on, and she does a great job at breaking these down. But you can imagine, you know, sometimes someone who, when they were younger, maybe was a caregiver, or something happened where they felt like they healed or helped somebody, and they might want to become a doctor. You know, or when you were younger and you were in your studies, and maybe you thought like, I get this stuff, I'm smart, I'm an intellectual, and it inspired you to want to study something particular in school. Or the athlete, right? So you join a sport and you start to do something, and you begin to identify yourself with that path. And we can see that kind of when I want you to look back pre-13 was this week, to look back and see where there were patterns, but also where you started to identify with stories and with different archetypes, and moving that forward to see like where you kind of pull some of those stories, like we talked about the Rocky story, you know, and he was really like the underdog, and we could put that as an archetype in here, that all of us, I'm not a boxer and you're not a boxer, but we can certainly relate to the underdog, right? So when we hear that music, we get excited, like, I can do it, right? We get all excited about that. Or, you know, the Isak Dinesen, who I told you is one of my heroines, who is a beautiful writer from Denmark, but also her story that was told and then films made of out of Africa is, again, it's an archetype of this really strong woman, you know, this very independent woman, you know. So I'd like you guys, again, this week to think about who are the stories and who are the heroes and heroines, but also just start to see them as archetypes, and how having an archetype can actually help you on your path to make decisions and to guide you and to give you strengths in different ways. So sometimes we choose one because we're inspired by it. By, like, for example, the visionary. You know, like I love that archetype, to be a visionary, you know, but I have to work at that. You know, and so at working at that could mean like I make goals around that. It could also mean that I choose an Ishwa Devata. I'm going to kind of wrap these together now, like Saraswati, because Saraswati was all about creativity and the arts. And I feel like devotion to her might help kind of bring that out of me a little bit and help me visualize things and be creative in that way. So I'm kind of throwing this out to all of you right now as an invitation to, again, look at the patterns and archetypes you've had, but also to kind of look for ones that you would like to help you grow and to expand yourself, and to move into maybe areas that you're weak in or that you've always wanted to be but not quite there, and to use that Ishwa Devata, or that archetype, to kind of pull you forward in a way. The quote for this week is, of course, by Carolyn Myss, and she said, "Archetypes are universal patterns of power emerging from our myths and beliefs, and that these myths and beliefs in turn invisibly weave their influential threads into the way we view every aspect of our lives." So I like that. I like thinking about even like the little things we do, like the little moments of our life where we feel challenged, like maybe using these archetypes to help us strengthen or be different, challenge ourselves in ways. Here's your homework. What heroic stories do you identify with? Who are your heroes and heroines? What archetypes do you identify with? Do you have a deity of choice that inspires you on your path? Write these in your notebook. Include photos or images as well. As always, namaste.